A very good evening to you indeed, and many thanks for joining us on today's edition. These are the headlines. Pan-African Malaria Conference participants echoed the need for collective efforts in eradicating malaria on the African continent. Uganda vowed cooperation with Rwanda in preventing the region from falling into atrocities like the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. And to international matters, former US President Donald Trump on Monday arrived in New York court for opening statements at criminal trial. Thank you very much for your company tonight, and we are very glad that you are with us from wherever you are tuning from. As we started off, the participants of the 8th Pan-African Malaria Conference emphasized that eradicating malaria on the continent needs a cooperation of institutions and effective implementation of measures that have demonstrated in the fight against malaria. Adam Squizera starts us off tonight.
As reiterated during the conference, primary care and health partners are among the most crucial partners in assisting people to prevent malaria and providing timely treatment to those who are ill, thus preventing it from becoming fatal. The Director General of Rwanda Biomedical Center RBC, Professor Mambo Muvunyi, highlighted that Rwanda has successfully combated malaria due to strong political will and effective governance structures. He emphasized that malaria control efforts are closely monitored from the grassroots level.
For cases of malaria, for example, are treated by community health workers. 60% of malaria cases are managed within the communities. So I think by doing that, we have been able to really reduce the case of malaria and also providing the support to the communities. And also look at also the way we support them. We also have other levels of health system where we have health posts, which also is there with all the needs and capacity to continue to work with communities and also support them. We also have health centers, district hospitals, and also hospitals, referral hospitals that are really integrated and working together to continue to implement all the interventions for malaria.
Some of the participants of the 8th Pan-African Malaria Conference affirmed that measures adopted by countries to combat the disease must transition from mere words to tangible actions.
Into action, it needs to have a specific line of support and investment, because you can have a great strategy, but if there's no investment to make sure that the strategy is a reality, it's just going to remain words. Systems that already exist and leverage them to integrate malaria services into those existing systems. And we welcome and we really urge for more research on social science, on barriers in terms of access to services for those communities in all their diversity. And so from that beginning, the beginning of designing those projects, in tailoring really the intervention to the context and need of communities, we think that that would be a true game changer. We would like to see in the malaria program also specific activity focusing on men, making sure that men understand the importance of sleeping under a net, because when they're pregnant, wife or women will receive a bed net, and she comes home with the net, and he's the one saying, no, I don't want to use it. So it's important that we see programs that actually involve, educate men about the importance of the use of some tools.
Global or even national approach is going to fall far short without understanding what are the needs, what are the specifics of the community. And so that actually has to come from listening to and empowerment of communities. Understanding this is specifically what the malaria picture is in this community. These are the challenges that are being faced. These are the challenges that are being faced this year that are different from the data from 5 years ago. We can't just say, oh, there are data from this village at some time ago, we know what to do. It's an evolving and developing process. And so from our perspective, I think there's three main wanting to make sure that communities are empowered to generate and use data at a local, at a fine scale and a fine response timeline. This is one of those things where we know that malaria is fast and unforgiving.
The Chief Executive Officer of World Bank Malaria, Dr. Michael Adekuni Charles, emphasized that eradicating malaria requires a collective and coordinated efforts.
As I said, the vaccines were piloted in 3 countries, and we now have this year where they're being rolled out significantly. The first place it's been rolled out is Cameroon, and we are hoping to see that it will cause reduction. So reduction in severe malaria cases. Children will still get malaria, can still get malaria, but it won't be severe, and it won't lead to as much death that we're seeing. So what we're saying is vaccines are important to prevent severe malaria, but we need to do it in combination with the other things. At the end of the day, prevention is better than cure. So how do we make sure that children continue to sleep under the nets, children continue to be protected as much as possible, pregnant women continue to be protected, so that with the combination of efforts, we will reach the, reducing the burden of malaria in Africa.
The 8th Pan-African Malaria Conference will provide a platform to share perspectives that strengthen efforts towards local-driven research and development and grassroots mobilization to end malaria through innovations, collaborations, and synergy among stakeholders. Statistics from the Ministry of Health indicates that there are currently 600,000 malaria patients in Rwanda, a decrease from 5 to 6 million cases reported in the last 5 years. With WHO report on malaria in 2023 ranks Rwanda as being at the forefront of the fight against malaria, with a readiness to reduce its prevalence by 55% in 2025. Rwanda also affirms its readiness to provide all necessary measures to the 85% of the population who are at higher risk of contracting malaria compared to others, aiming to support them in effectively dealing with the disease. Adam Squizera, RwandaTV News.
Thank you, Adam Squizera, for the report. As we move ahead still on these matters, as countries intensify efforts to combat malaria, a multifaceted approach is deemed crucial by health experts for sustainable eradication. Globally, in 2022 alone, an estimated 249 million malaria cases and 608,000 deaths were reported across 85 countries. Presently, there are 2 malaria vaccines exclusively administered to children under the age of 5. Dr. Michael Adekuni Charles, CEO of Rollback Malaria, provides insights into advancements achieved in vaccine development and broader malaria control strategies.
We know that the fight against malaria has been going on for decades. And in some instances, we are able to win the battle. In other instances, we've stagnated. And in other cases, we've also gone back. Gone back in terms of the targets we set against malaria, against really bringing down the burden of malaria. Between 2000 and 2015, a lot of progress was made. We were able to avert millions and millions of deaths, over 11 million deaths. We were able to avert through our interventions. Interventions such as indoor residual spraying, interventions such as bed nets, long-lasting bed nets, and really campaigns around sensitization, around environmental hygiene, etc. However, since 2015, we've recorded that we have stalled because of various reasons that we call the perfect storm. Perfect storm because there is biological resistance, that means resistance to the medication, resistance to the bed nets, resistance to rapid diagnostic tests that we have, so resistance all around. We've also stalled because of the effect of climate change, the weather patterns, the variations, more rains, means more stagnant water, means more breeding ground for mosquitoes, means cases will go up. And we've been able to see that and demonstrate that in Pakistan with the 2022 floods where we had a 5-fold increase, or even in Mozambique and Madagascar. We've also stalled because of issues around conflicts. If we look at some of our countries on the continent, we've seen that conflict really stops people from getting the needed medication, the needed treatments, the needed commodities that they need for malaria prevention. And finally, it's also about the money. The money is not flowing in as previously anticipated and as expected. Currently, annually, we expect for us to be able to fight malaria globally, we need about $7 billion US. We currently have about $3.5 billion US annually. So we're definitely way behind in terms of what we can do. And I think our call in this conference at the MAME is really to bring together the researchers, the academicians, and really to see how can we continue to innovate in terms of new tools. And I'm happy to note that recently we have a few new tools on the market. I spoke initially about resistance, and now I'm happy to say that we have what we call the dual active ingredient bed nets, which is a bed net that has two chemical products in it. So if the mosquito is resistant against one, we can still be effective with the other. And that's a new tool that has come on board, and we're rolling that out in countries as well. We also have the vaccines for children, children between the age of 6 months and 2 years, where studies have been conducted in 3 countries, namely in Zambia, in Ghana, and in Kenya. And through that, we went through what we call pre-qualification with WHO, and that is being scaled up in many countries. Recently, I was in Cameroon, where we actually saw the first nationwide rollout of the vaccines. So that's good news, but just also to note that vaccines alone is not it. Vaccines alone is not the silver bullet. We need to make sure we do everything in combination. So we need to continue with the bed nets, we need to continue with the IRS, we need to continue with the seasonal malaria chemoprevention and all the other tools. The first place it's been rolled out is Cameroon, and we are hoping to see that it will cause reduction. So reduction in severe malaria cases. Children will still get malaria, can still get malaria, but it won't be severe, and it won't lead to as much death that we're seeing. So what we're saying is vaccines are important to prevent severe malaria, but we need to do it in combination with the other things. At the end of the day, prevention is better than cure. So how do we make sure that children continue to sleep under the nets, children continue to be protected as much as possible, pregnant women continue to be protected, so that with a combination of efforts, we will reach the, reducing the burden of malaria in Africa. If we just look at the vaccines alone, the efficacy is not 100%, unlike other vaccines as well. So we're just at the start. Maybe in future we will get to 100%, but for now we cannot have the vaccines alone as the only answer. Secondly, vaccines alone, or vaccines we're only giving it to children between the age of 6 months and 2 years. So the other population are still exposed to getting malaria. Eventually we will get there, but the most important age group that are mainly affected are the children under the age of 5. That's why their focus is on them at the moment. But as technology develops, as we get better at the vaccines, definitely we'll be looking at how do we roll it out and how do we also protect the other age groups as well. But for now, the focus is on children. Obviously, with any new tools, they will face challenges. Challenges in terms of production, challenges in terms of scale-up, challenges in terms of acceptance. So we are working closely with the Ministry of Health, and that's where issues around the information around the vaccines is really important, making sure that we have a community-level approach, community engagement, making sure that they understand how to do this and the benefits of it. So a lot of our efforts as the RBM partnership is also to work with the countries in terms of what does this mean and how do we really scale it up at scale to ensure that we get the needed product and the needed impact that we want to have. So it's still work in progress, and as we continue to roll it out country by country, we will be able to learn from the experience. We know the statistics, we know cases are going up in some areas, but we also know that some of the countries have done it. I'll give the example of this country, where in the past we are recording thousands and thousands of cases. Now there are less than 600 cases of malaria annually in Rwanda. There are about 51 deaths of malaria compared to 600 deaths a few years ago. So for me, if we take the example of Rwanda, the first thing that comes to mind is leadership. leadership from the highest level, so political leadership, leadership from the Minister of Health himself, and leadership from the communities as well. So that's the first and foremost, and that's why we actually made a recommitment of ourselves. We went to Yaoundé in March, where we had what we call the Yaoundé Declaration, which was looking into what do we need to do next to ensure that we drive down the burden. We know the tools that work. We have the tools that work. What else do we need to do? And it's left for us as human beings to come together and ensure that, first of all, we commit to leadership at all levels. The second thing is that fighting malaria cannot be done from a health perspective alone. We need to make sure that we engage with the other sectors, so bringing the private sector along, making sure that we have a multi-sectoral approach. Ministry of Agriculture, how are we working with them in terms of larvicidin, for example? How are we working with the Ministry of Infrastructure in terms of the gutters, in terms of the potholes that are, really breeding grounds for mosquitoes? So really making sure that we work beyond just looking at it from a health perspective, and that's what the Yaoundé Declaration is about: multi-sectoral approach, domestic resource mobilization, leadership commitment, surveillance, data gathering, and really making sure that we ensure that there's a collaborative effort in fighting this. We say that ending malaria starts with me, starts with you, starts with all of us. We all need to join the ship in terms of really coming together and driving down the burden of malaria. This year, I'm also happy to note that we have the World Malaria Day, which is really coming up on the 25th of April in a few days' time. And our theme there is around gender, equity, and human rights. We know that malaria disproportionately affects children under the age of 5, as well as pregnant women. That's why for us it is really important that we continue to mainstream issues around gender within our programming, not just in malaria as a whole, but collectively within the health sector. Gender really needs to be at the forefront of that.
Moving ahead, on Monday, the Rwanda Defense Force delegation, led by Chief of Defense Staff General Mubalak Muganga, visited the Jordanian Army Forces JAF headquarters. The delegation was hosted by the chairman of the JAF, Major General Youssef Huneti, where the two leaders discussed on further strengthening the RDF and JAF cooperation. Moving ahead, the plenary session of the Chamber of Deputies passed a law regulating evidence used in courts. One significant change brought about by this new law is addressing issues that arose with the existing law, such as enabling witnesses to provide their testimonies without physically appearing in courts. This can now be done through various technological means, including visual and audio formats. Adam Squizera.
The bill stipulates that individuals with speech disabilities can provide testimony using written or recorded evidence of what they witnessed or how events unfolded, which will be considered valid. Additionally, it outlines the procedure for the admission of the defendant's confession. For a confession to be accepted, the accused must be fully aware of the consequences, provided voluntarily, and must be corroborated by other evidences. The president of the Committee on Political Affairs and Gender in Parliament of Rwanda, Rubagumya Emma Furaha, pointed out that this law aims to modernize and update the new existing law from 2004, ensuring it remains relevant and effective in the current context.
And that's why there were some changes made in order to expand the law to not only be used in courts but also in other legal institutions.
The Minister of State in charge of Constitution and Legal Affairs in the Ministry of Justice, Nyirahabimana Sorina, who was representing the government of Rwanda, highlighted that these provisions regarding evidence will also facilitate the resolution of the issues in coordinated manner, enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of the legal system.
Moving ahead to Kwibuka 30 matters, the Ugandan government ensures continued cooperation with Rwanda in preventing anything that would put the region and the African continent at large back to the dark times as of what happened in 1994 during the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. These were said as the Minister of State in charge of Veteran Affairs at the Ugandan Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs joined Rwandans and Friends of Rwanda in Uganda for the 30th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi.
Participants of the 30th commemoration held at Victoria Lake kicked off with laying breath into the waters.
Whenever you reach here, the heart races because you feel that you are near with your beloved ones.
The commemoration proceeded on the outskirts of Lake Victoria in Uganda, in the Golo area, on the side of Masaka district. Here are monuments where more than 40,000 bodies pulled out of the lake were buried. Retired Colonel Joseph Rutabana, Rwanda's High Commissioner to Uganda, reiterates that such acts favors foreigners to be fact holders of how the genocide against the Tutsi was planned and implemented for extermination of a group of people.
Today, there's some new ambassadors who came here for the first time, but went back with lessons. Because there is one who asked me why we came to commemorate from this place, and I merely explained to him, we always have to show that what happened here in Rwanda was beyond.
In this commemoration, the High Commissioner of Rwanda to Uganda, retired Colonel Joseph Rutabana, decorated Owekitibwa Muhammad Nodin Tabani an Umurinzi w'Igihango Award, loosely translated as the Protector of Pact, thanks to his valuable contribution in pulling out of the waters the bodies of the killed Tutsi and burying them.
I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank and appreciate the founder of the City Unity Club, Intwa Ramumuri, Her Excellency Madame Janet Kagame, the First Lady of Rwanda, for the recognition and awarding of a certificate of appreciation, Unity Award 2023, and other accompanying items.
The Minister of State in charge of Veteran Affairs at the Ugandan Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs, Aleru Huda Abasan, reiterated that the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda demonstrated a great failure of the international community, hence asking Ugandans to learn lessons.
Remembering genocide, because globally we see a steady rise in a hate crime motivated by discrimination and bigotry. This is precisely why we need to wake up now and bring back empathy for the suffering, others near and far, through remembering. Listing a memorial site will enable the entire world to learn more about and draw lessons. Is a call to the Ugandans and Africans at large to reaffirm their unwavering support to the prevention and the fight against genocide, to ensure that it never happens again.
Currently, there are genocide memorials in different parts of Lake Victoria, including Lambu, where more than 3,000 bodies are buried, Kansesero, where more than 2,000 bodies are buried, and Golo, where more than 4,000 bodies are buried. There's a project of cooperation between the two countries that will place a sign with the names of the Tutsi who were killed and their bodies resting in these monuments. Prince Manzi, RwandaTV News.
Thank you, Prince. Survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi who had sought refuge in Saint Famille Catholic Church recount the enduring unimaginable horrors. However, they say 3 decades later, they have been able to display resilience and were able to rebuild their lives. Masengo Gilbert survived at the former Rugenje sector in which St. Famille Church was located. He testifies how Tutsis were brutally tortured and killed in this church and neighboring areas supported by the parish leaders, namely Father Wenceslas Munyeshaka and Archbishop of Kigali, Nsengiyumva Vincent. As for Marie Grace Mukabyagaju, who was a teacher at Saint Famille Primary School, although it was not easy to survive, God protected them, and now, after 30 years, they have rebuilt themselves and prospered, thanks to the good leadership of the country. A guard came and told her that the priest gave her out to die. She went and told her mother that she was supposed to die that day. Then her mother advised her to go to the priest so he could do whatever he wanted with her. When she got to the priest, he told her that he wanted her for a long time, but he's no longer interested. Then she came back. Then they immediately shot her and she fell down as her mother watched.
Kubera ko twagize ubuyobozi bwadufashije butwitaho.
Because we got good leadership that cared and helped us, first of all, by giving us a chance to commemorate our loved ones, be able to cry and grieve them, tell their stories. That helped us very much, as our loved ones were not forgotten. But moreover, the government established ways to support us. Our children went to school. Those who had no homes were given ones. The sick received medication. We were given the rights that we had not had before. The executive administrator of Nyarugenge district, Amy Ngabonziza, noted that the stories of this place serves as a sign of the resilience of Rwanda and Rwandans.
Uyu munsi tariki 22 z'ukwezi kwa kane niyo munsi twahisemo kwibuka hano mu murenge wa Muhima.
On 22nd April, we decided to commemorate in this sector of Muhima because that is the day we recall the resilience of Rwanda and Rwandans in general. It was the same day that Inkotanyi rescued citizens who had sought refuge at Saint Famille, but they had no hope of living anymore as they were waiting to be killed. They came here hoping they would survive from the church, but rather it was the opposite. So today, we honor more than 10,000 victims of the genocide against the Tutsi who were killed at Saint Famille, but also reflect on the value of resilience that we inherited from Inkotanyi as a country. More than 10,000 Tutsis were killed at Saint Famille Catholic Church, who had sought refuge there from the former Rugenge, Muhima, and Gikondo sectors in the former Nyarugenge commune. And that's all from us here at RB's Rwanda Television News. On behalf of the entire news production as well as the technical team that made it happen, many thanks for being with us. And up until next time, stay safe and we wish you a great, safe and fruitful week ahead. Goodbye.